As we uncover each layer in more detail, let's start with the very first layer, which is the physical layer. Now, as we discussed before, this layer literally deals with the physical part of a network. It provides the hardware requirements to send and receive data. This includes cables, network interface cards, connectors, and all physical things. But what about Wi-Fi? You might have noticed how we emphasize a lot about this layer dealing with the physical aspects, but you might also be wondering, does this apply to Wi-Fi? Maybe you've heard about satellite services, or maybe something called point-to-point, or even point-to-multipoint links. What about those? Well, all those examples, including Wi-Fi, satellite, and point-to-point, are wireless services, and they use radio waves to transmit the information, which means that electrons are sent over the air using different frequencies and technologies to send the data. Just like a regular radio has antennas to receive the broadcasted information, your laptop and phones have antennas as well. So even if you can't really touch or feel the radio waves, they're there all around us and they're part of the physical layer. So let's talk a little bit more about some layer 1 devices, and let's start with the wireless devices first. As discussed before, the antennas are part of the physical layer. There are several types of antennas depending on the technology used. Here, we'll only mention a few examples related to networking, which means we'll talk about Wi-Fi, point-to-point, and point-to-multipoint. So let's start with Wi-Fi devices. In Wi-Fi, you've probably seen a router or an access point with its antennas, and they might look a little bit like this. Some have more antennas, some have fewer antennas, or maybe you've seen some wireless access points that look a little bit like this. The antennas are still there, they're just inside of the access point. And if you were to open one up, it would look a little bit like this. You can see the antennas right there, they're just not sticking out of the device. Your laptop or phone also needs antennas to send and receive data. In laptops, the antennas are usually on the border of the screen, but that does depend on the design. Maybe you've also seen some USB to Wi-Fi adapters that look something like this. Some internet service providers offer their service using a satellite dish. They install a dish on the outside of a house that sends and receives data to and from a satellite that is up there in space. But obviously that's not all of it. The internet is not in space, even if people call it cyberspace. The satellite still needs to send to and receive from some other dish on the ground that connects to the rest of the internet. This type of service, while usually not the most popular, has resurfaced in recent months because of SpaceX's Starlink program. This is essentially what the program offers. The downside of this is that satellite internet can be a little bit slower compared to some of the other services, and could also be affected by things like clouds or trees or so on. But the benefit is that it could provide service to areas that are hard to reach via conventional services. Another type of connection in wireless links is called point-to-point, and this type of link directly connects two different sites without sending the data packets through a service provider. For example, if you wanted to connect to a warehouse or to one of your other offices nearby, you could use point-to-point, and this is the same as if you were to use a very long cable that connected the two different sites. But a wireless link might, in some cases, be cheaper and easier to set up. One variation of this is called point-to-multipoint, where several sites connect to one main location. The negative side of these links is that they need what's known as a line of sight, or LOS, meaning that they need a clear path over the air. One antenna must be able to see the other antenna in order to avoid interference, which means that these types of links are very complicated to set up in big cities where buildings might interfere with the line of sight, or other things that could also interfere would be mountains, hills, etc. And in case you're wondering, yes, the curvature of the Earth could also interfere. Unless you're someone who believes that the Earth is flat, in which case, well, let's just not talk about that. So designing wireless links can be a very complex engineering challenge. You need to consider countless variables like the height of the antennas, the frequencies, the channels, etc. This by itself is an entire specialization area. This also means that wireless links can't be used for very long distances, since eventually you'll run into something blocking the line of sight, whether it be a mountain, trees, rocks, or even the Earth. So that's it for this concept. Let's go ahead and complete this lesson, and let's move on to the next lesson where we'll talk about wired devices.